Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we can finish on time. If you don't know, my name's Curtis Cotton. I am the TSA for North and East Texas. If you guys have any questions during this presentation, if you would please just put them in the chat option, or most of you guys have my email. Just go ahead and send me an email afterwards, and I'll be happy to answer that when we get finished. Basically, what we're going to cover today is the A2L education training that we go over with our contractors. Everybody does it a little bit different, but this is my presentation for the North and East Texas part. Everybody's is pretty much similar to this. We cover the same content, just in a different way. But like I said, if you have any questions, please just use the chat. Keep your microphones muted so that we don't have any distractions, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so March 1st, 2024 update. You will see here all the states that are A2L allowed today. And then you'll see California is still updates complete, effective date not reached yet. And then Nevada and Michigan still working on it. So we still have a total of 46 states with state law and/or state code updates, which allow for A2L equipment. 45 are in effect as of March 1st, 2024. And when Daikin was basically taking all the data in to figure out which refrigerant they wanted to use, these are the 5 criteria that they used in order to come up with their decision for R32. That's environmental impact, energy efficiency, safety, economic value, and ozone layer protection. So the right choice is determined by many factors, including efficiency and capacity, GWP, value, availability, cost, ease of reuse, and reclamation. The right combination results in the best value for the owner, so the homeowner, and optimal environmental value for our planet. We should have some of these in the branches. If we do not have the pressure temperature charts for A1 versus A2L in your branch, then we can get those ordered on partner link so that we have them available for our contractors. And you will see here that the pressure temperature chart has R22, R410A, R32, and R54. Sorry, 454. If you'll look on the right-hand side, or the right image there, and you'll go to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to be the white column on the left-hand side of the right image. And you can follow that across. You'll see that R22 was at 70 degrees, 121.4 PSI. And then 410 was right around 201. And then you'll see R32 is at 205. And then in comparison to 454, which is a blend refrigerant, 192 to 184, just kind of depending. So the most common question that we get currently is, what is the difference going to be in the field based off of your pressures? Another common thing, because the pressures aren't too far off, can we use R32 in a 410 or 410 in an R32 coil? Our answer to that every time is going to be no, because that's the factory's answer. And then you can see here that you're going to be looking at a 4 to 7 degree or PSI temperature difference based off of your Fahrenheit. So not a big change as far as our pressures. There is some change, and so it is going to make a difference. But as far as, hey, this is what we're PSI, we're testing our evap coils at. We go over all of that information in our 1 and 2 install classes, our S-Series install classes, inverter. All of that is covered as far as properly testing for leaks before we actually release our refrigerant. But this is just a good idea of what we're going to be looking at as far as our pressures in relation to 410. Refrigerant safety and awareness. So you'll see on the left-hand side are refrigerant cylinders, or otherwise called recovery cylinders, and then refillable cylinders, otherwise called recovery cylinders. on the right. And so this isn't an actual picture of what we're carrying in our locations, but it is the correct brand, and it is R32, and it is the right color. It's just a little bit different bottle. And then the refillable or recovery cylinders, I don't believe that we have these in stock yet, and we'll go over the details of what the difference is in between this recovery cylinder versus our previous recovery cylinders for 22 and 410. But when we do have them in stock, they will have a red line over the top of them to indicate that they are A2L refrigerant, which is going to be left-hand thread refrigerant recovery tanks. Refrigerant safety and awareness still. Refrigerant cylinders are pressurized and can rupture when exposed to high temperatures. Cylinders should be stored at temperatures under 125°F. That's going to be the same, guys, for all of our previous refrigerants as well. So nothing's necessarily changing because we're dealing with a mildly flammable refrigerant now. This is just safety and awareness, even from previous refrigerants. So as long as we're kind of abiding by our practices that the contractors have been following up to this point, as long as they're up to industry standards, then everything else should kind of fall in line with that with our A2L product. Refillable cylinders or recovery tanks should not be filled beyond 80% of their maximum capacity. This is not new. So if you have a propane tank at your house for if you live in the country or out of the city and it's not natural gas, then you would have a propane tank either above ground or below ground. And when your gas company comes out to fill that up, they are only going to fill it to 80, maximum 85% capacity. And that's to allow for expansion of the gases during different temperatures and different climates. Transportation. This was a big question that we had when A2Ls first started getting released and mentioned about being used here in the States was what are the differences going to be as far as how we can carry the refrigerant or what type of licenses we're going to have in addition to what we already have. And none of that's necessarily going to change. So from an EPA perspective, everybody will be grandfathered in with their A2L on their EPA license. So there's not going to be any additional continued education classes that have to be taken in order to continue to handle this refrigerant. Also, well, in addition to that, there are some classes that you can take through ESCO. We don't necessarily offer them, but you can get with ESCO directly, and they have a list of people that do offer those classes in the Metroplex or in your area, depending on where you're at. And so that's just kind of like an educational for you to kind of know the refrigerant a little bit better, but it's not required in order for you to be able to handle the refrigerants. And then secondly was, which there's a slide on this too, but are we going to be able to carry this on our vehicles? And so we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But industry's best practice is to ensure that the relief valve is at the 12 o'clock position. Basically what they're saying is you'll see the rack on your left-hand side. Let's not put our refrigerant in backwards and have our relief valve facing downwards. And then cylinders should be secured to prevent excessive movement while in transit. This is going to be the same for any of our refrigerants. If we're in a vehicle accident, we want to make sure that everything is tidied down and secured so we don't have any bottles flying around. And then also we want to prevent any of those bottles from getting opened by falling off the rack and leaking into your vehicle. More importantly with A2Ls than A1 products, but we will talk about why that's important and how to prevent certain scenarios. So in relation with your A1 product, you'll see on the left-hand side, you have a lower toxicity. And as you go up the scale here from A1 to A2, you will have a higher flammability rate. So A1 was 410 R22, and then your A2L product, which is going to be on the lower flammability side of the lower bracket. And then you have your A2 and A3, which is where you're going to get into your liquid propane and isobutane, things like that. A couple questions here. Yes, if you want a copy of this, please just email me and I can get it sent out to you guys. And will our trucks be able to deliver to customers? Yes, we can. So, Carla, I will get to that here in just a moment as far as the regulations on what we can and can't carry. Um, and we'll go across that then. Basically, there's not going to be much change, but we will discuss that. And then your A2 and A3 product is going to be your hired. So that's going to be, like I said, your liquid propane that you would use for your barbecue grill at your house, or if you have a tank at your house. All right, so to answer your question, the DOT and OSHA have issued updates or clarifications which allow for the transportation or storage of flammable refrigerants. This was also a concern uh, for our contractors. If they were to pick up a pallet of refrigerant or even a bottle, were they going to have some type of stipulation added to their insurance or to their vehicles where they're going to have to get another certification in order. A lot of the times we'll see vehicles driving down the road that have nitrogen or liquid propane. And if you look on the back, they have a OSHA, I guess it's just kind of a display there that folds up and down and it says, I'm carrying this and I'm authorized and licensed to be able to carry this product. That is not going to be effective for us carrying refrigerant back and forth or on a daily basis. So DOT has stated that up to 12 kilograms or 26.4 pounds of flammable non-toxic liquefied gas, including A2L refrigerants, are not subject to the requirements of the HMR, provided they are not offered or transported by aircraft. So as long as we keep them out of our airplane, we're fine. And it's 26.4 pounds of refrigerant per bottle. Okay, so if you have a contractor that wants to come and pick up a pallet of refrigerant and carry it back to the shop, that's fine. As long as we don't have more than 26.4 pounds of refrigerant per bottle. So our recovery cylinders won't hold more than that. Well, I guess they could, but not at 80%. So we need to pay attention to that. And then also our actual R32 bottles that we sell are going to have less than 26.4 pounds of refrigerant. They may weigh more than that in total, including the bottle, but the refrigerant itself will be less than 26.4 pounds. Hopefully that answers your question. Tool safety: gauges, digitals, or analog, and hoses used during the installation or service of systems charged with a flammable refrigerant must be rated for the use with a flammable refrigerant. You can see this on our shelves. I just purchased a new set of analog gauges and A2L hoses. On the front, it will have A2L. So you'll see on the front of the hose package, it's going to say A2L approved. I'm assuming that it's going to handle higher pressures, as our refrigerant is a little bit higher pressure, and be flame resistant. Before beginning work, be sure that the system is properly grounded. That is to make sure that we don't have any sparks. And system repairs. A2L systems are designed with electrical components that are intrinsically safe. Simply stated, IS components such as a contactor. We've already seen this. If anybody has opened up the service panel of a condenser, or even the contactors that we sell off the shelf, you'll see that there's a black panel on the front of where the contact is made inside that contactor. It has two small Phillips head screws there. That is a IS component, so it's intrinsically safe. Basically, it's reducing the potential of a spark having access to any type of flammable gas in its area. Or capacitor that are designed to be enclosed, isolating the electrical contacts from the atmosphere. Have not seen a picture of what the capacitor is going to look like. If anybody's seen these hit our shelves yet, then please let me know. But I would imagine that it's going to have a clear plastic top on it with small holes above the Herm and common and fan side, all of your connections on top of your capacitor. That wire will slip through and connect to, and it may even have a little rubber grommet on there, just to, like it says, to enclose and isolate that electrical contact from the possibility of being generated as a spark. If heat or a spark is generated, it will be contained within the protective enclosure. This will prevent these components from being an ignition source if there is a leak of an A2L refrigerant. So let's back up a little bit and talk about how we got to A2L refrigerants. The Montreal Protocol was introduced in 1990. This was the phase down of R22 and moving towards the phasing of 410 into our units. So in 1990, we were at 100%. In about 2005, we dropped down to about 65%. And then 2010, down to below 40%. And then 2015, all the way down to about 15%. And then down to about 2% after 2020, maybe 5% there. The American Innovation and Manufacturing Act, or AIM Act, was enacted by Congress in late 2020 as part of the Consolidation Appropriations Act, a Corona stimulus package. And that was the phase down of R410A. So in 2020, the AIM Act directs the EPA's focus to the phase down, substitution, and management of HFC refrigerants, including 410. In 2022, production was reduced by 10%. In 24, it was decreased. So this year it was decreased by 40%. In 29 by 70%, and so forth. In 34, 80%, and then 36 down to 85%. I know that there's some questions probably revolving around this phase down and what it looks like, not only for 410 product, but also for R32 product, and we will soon get to that for clarification. So why the change? Low GWP. So GWP is global warming potential, and it's a way to measure how much gas contributes to global warming relative to carbon dioxide. So in relation to the amount of CO2, and that's all taken into consideration with what refrigerants to move to and how long they'll be around and how we sustain those. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. R32 is a single component refrigerant. What does that mean? It can be charged in a liquid or a gas state. R54 is a blend and must only be charged as a liquid. And then there's going to be left-hand threads on the refrigerant bottles. So initially there was questions, will the units have left-hand threads? No, the units will stay with your traditional threading. There is an adapter that you can purchase, or there's hoses that have left-hand threads on them to connect to your recovery tank or your refrigerant bottle itself. Here's a diagram of just a test that was done with R32 being introduced into the atmosphere in kind of an enclosed spot. This is going to lead into our LFL, which is our lower flammability limit, but we'll discuss that here in a moment and what that means. But you can see the image on the far left is no R32 introduced into the atmosphere, and then 14 ounces in the middle and 28 ounces to the far right. There's not much of a change in between the 14 and the 28 ounces. And also remember, this is in a controlled environment. There is no there's no combustion here. It only makes the flames a little bit bigger, and it's in the direct line of the refrigerant being introduced from that system. All that kind of plays a part in what makes A2L refrigerants flammable, what makes them combustionable. All the flammability ratings and everything like that comes from basically the size of the area and the amount of the refrigerant. And we'll explain here in just a little bit how that plays a part in how our units are sized and how we can remain safe in the field. So globally, you can see that R32 is already being used in the majority of the rest of the world. Here in North America, you'll see that R32 and 454 are both options. Here, once again, 32 is a single component refrigerant and 454 is a blend. And you can see when production actually started and the testing started in each of these countries. So Japan was 2012, India 2013, Thailand and Australia 2014, along with Europe, and then North America 2016. You'll see a little note there in the bottom left-hand corner. R32 has achieved a global installed base of over 230 million systems in over 130 countries by more than 50 OEMs. So that's Daikin's estimate. But some of their real numbers are that R32 is in over 105 million households worldwide. So if you take that and you take the average of houses that have multiple systems, and then also your mini split systems that are used a lot in Europe and everything like that, then that all plays a part in R32. So this isn't anything that's technically super new to us or anything. It's been a while, around for a while. It's just now being implemented due to our GWP focus here in the Americas. So tools. There are a few tools that need to be changed. There are some that are required to be changed, and then some that are going to be used for any of your refrigerants. One of the ones that are required to be changed is your recovery unit. Excuse me. So you need to make sure that you have a brushless DC-driven recovery unit. So this is going to have a no spark scenario, or anything that is or could generate a spark is concealed, or IS. Vacuum pump. So most vacuum pumps are going to be okay for A2L if they were purchased in the last 3 to 5 years. If it was purchased before that, you might just want to check with the manufacturer and make sure that it is safe to use on A2L products. Anything that we sell currently in our branches is going to be A2L approved. Leak detectors are made to sniff gases, and so it's not particular to a certain refrigerant. So your leak detectors are still going to be used across all of your different refrigerants: 22, 410, 454, 32, 1234, whatever it might be, 12. Okay, so analog gauges, you should, in your branches, you should have your A2L analog gauges, which is a picture on your left-hand side. That is going to have your 454. I can zoom in a little bit if you haven't had a chance to look at these. I believe I can, yeah. So here in the pink, you will have your 410, and then your 454 will be blue, and your 32 will be green. So these are going to be your A2L gauges. And then on your S-mans, there is already an R32 setting on there. You just have to switch from either 410 or 404, whatever refrigerant you were on last, over to 32. I will say, as far as contamination, important, my A2L gauges will only be used for A2L product. If I'm doing any type of recovery or burnout, whatever, change out, whatever it might be, I would be using an old set of analog gauges to do that as well, to recover refrigerant. No worries of contamination there. And then for all of your charging purposes, I would either have 2 sets of hoses that you would switch for 410 or A2L, 2 sets of S-mans or whatever you're using for your charging purposes if you're having to add refrigerant. If you have your hoseless filled piece, then they're probably okay, but obviously you're going to need a hose if you're charging with that. If you're not going to have a separate set of gauges for A2L versus A1 refrigerants, then before hooking up to a 32 unit off of a 410 unit, you probably need to run flush through your hoses. We need to make sure that we're speaking to our contractors about this, because we do not want to risk any type of contamination 410 refrigerant over to your A2L. And then also the oils are the same. They're POE oils, so there's no change there. But we do need to make sure that our refrigerants aren't being contaminated. Some other tools, recovery cylinder. So this is the difference. I think our previous recovery cylinders, they had a pressure resistance up to 455 PSI, somewhere in there. But A2L needs to have a pressure resistance of 696. So quite the jump, 150 PSI or so. And then keep in mind that the bottle is going to have left-hand threads, so you need the adapter piece. Never exceed the 80% we talked about. Never mix recovered refrigerants, and then label your cylinder. So it will have a red stripe at the top, but it would be nice to have it labeled as well. And then your adapter. Too many times I've gotten on site for a mini split call back in my service days and not had my mini split fitting. It's going to be the same with this. If you get on site or contractors on site and they do not have that and they have an A2L refrigerant, they're not going to be able to connect to their bottle. Uh, yeah, good question. Can you put 410 in the A2L recovery tanks? Yes, you can. There's no difference there. If it's been used for a different refrigerant, you would need to pull a vacuum on that bottle and make sure that that bottle's cleaned of all refrigerants. But yes, you can put 410 in there. You just cannot put an A2L refrigerant into a 410 bottle. All right, so this is just a quick cheat sheet on what has to be different. Remember, we talked about some things that need to be different, that could be different, and then some things that will change. So the two main things here are your recovery unit and then your recovery cylinder. So there it is, 580 PSI was the 410 and 696 on the 32. And then the threads are different. All right, so that was all of our like major A2L. How are we going to carry the refrigerant? Are we going to have special certifications? What's the procedure on getting it back and forth? What does that look like? What's the purpose of 32? All the GWP stuff. Moving forward from there, this is the rest of the slides are basically going to be over our integration or mitigation system, and then the wiring of that. There's also some other things that are on here that are super relative to A2L. So not everything is about the Dragonfly, but this from a technical perspective is a lot more interesting to me than the other stuff. But there's been a lot of questions for the Dragonfly or the furnace integration kit. This is going to be used on all non-A2L furnaces that are having an additional A2L coil and condenser added to them. So if you have a furnace that's in place that's 6 years old or 8 years old, still in good shape, whether it's Train, Carrier, Amana, Goodman, Daikin, it doesn't matter, guys, as long as it's not communicating. If it's communicating our equipment, it'll work. If it's communicating Train or Carrier or something, it's not going to work with the Dragonfly. But if it's a 24-volt system, it can be used on any furnace. It has to be used on our coil because our coil has the sensor with it. The sensor does not come with the Dragonfly itself. It comes with the coil and 4-foot lead to that. There's a punch out in the front of the door. So you would just knock that out, pull your lead through there for your sensor, mount your Dragonfly, and then attach your sensor and your equipment and thermostat wires to that. Like I said, it is able to be used with other equipment, just has to be 24 volts basically, so traditional or conventional wiring. All right, A2L status codes. This is going to be what is listed in the Dragonfly handbook or user manual. The sensor comes with the coil itself, so it'll be a replacement part if that's what you're asking. If the sensor goes bad and needs to be replaced, then it would be on the parts manual on Partner Link as a replacement part, and we would order just the sensor. But the sensor is shipped with the cased coil. Remember, this is only for A2L furnaces that are having, or I'm sorry, non-A2L furnaces that are having A2L equipment put with them. moving forward, the majority of our furnaces that are being released now are A2L compliant. All of our air handlers are A2L. By the time that we get to, and we're going to discuss this too, but the time we get to S series equipment being released, we're not going to have to worry about using a Dragonfly, because when the S series condensers are released, we should already have 80 and 96% communicating furnaces that will work with that A2L S series product. So we're not going to have to worry about, hopefully we're not going to have to worry about using the Dragonfly. It will work, but I don't believe that we're going to have to utilize it with our higher series stuff, since our A2L furnaces are already being released. But inside the manual, you'll see all your different modes, 1 through 7 there. Normal operation, R32 leak alarm, delay mode, system verification mode, control board internal fault, R32 sensor communication fault, and then R32 sensor fault. We have not received any information from Daikin yet as to how to check that sensor. Since it is there's a communication fault, I'm assuming that it's probably going to be DC voltage, but we have not received anything with that. So right now we're just going to be at the mercy of the Dragonfly itself. As far as if it's saying sensor communication fault, then it's either not plugged in or plugged in incorrectly, or we have a bad sensor, and then of course the 32 sensor fault, and go from there. Hopefully pretty soon, as we just received some of the install and commissioning manuals for A2L products. So we are getting there, but we are kind of in the dark in some of the R32 product being released from Daikin until we get the specifications on it. Luckily, we're smart enough to figure it out most of the time. And then kind of the same codes here, but this is actually going to be listed on the Dragonfly itself. So there's a little clear panel that goes on the top, and it'll have your alarms listed there as well. So wiring on a non-communicating system is going to be 24 volts. Your thermostat will go to the thermostat side of your Dragonfly, and then your air conditioner or heat pump will hook directly to those terminals as well and go outside. On the equipment side, you will see that your equipment, your indoor equipment, hooks to the indoor unit side of the Dragonfly control, and then your sensor will just get plugged into the sensor connector. It's pretty simple, not meant to be made difficult. There's not too many changes. It's almost like a zone board. It just kind of flows through there. Anytime that there is a detection of an A2L gas, or really any refrigerant, to that point, it's going to start blinking rapidly on the Dragonfly. Everything's going to shut down except for the blower motor. It'll run until that sensing device has said, hey, that refrigerant is no longer sensible. And the blower motor is going to continue to run for 3 to 5 minutes after that to make sure that everything is released. It's kind of like if you had a limit switch that was not allowing your or your flame sensor wasn't coming on or something, and your gas fired up, but your flame sensor didn't detect your gas. What's going to happen after that is your blower motor is going to kick on to make sure that you're exhausting any possibility of gas buildup inside your furnace before the next ignition, because we don't want gas to be stored there, our valve to be turned on. It's just exhausting gas, and then all of a sudden we have a spark, and then we have a big explosion, right? Not necessarily, I'm talking about with propane or natural gas, but it's kind of the same process. All it's doing is mitigating the detection of that refrigerant and exhausting it in a way that is appropriate according to the A2L guidelines. On your comfort bridge communicating system, typical 5 wires from your thermostat go into the Dragonfly. Your 1 and 2 is going to leave the Dragonfly and go to your outdoor equipment. And then you'll break the indoor equipment with your Dragonfly. Kind of the same process there, but this would be set up as a like 2-stage communicating system, or your inverter communicating system, your cube inverter communicating system with comfort bridge. Comfort bridge non-communicating, this is going to be the same as your 24-volt non-communicating. The only difference is we will have to go into Cool Cloud or our push buttons and tell the system, hey, you are not a communicating system. You're going to be 24 volts, and this is how we set you up. So that's the only change in between that and the 24-volt non-communicating system. Just letting our board know that our thermostat's going to be in control instead of the board. And then ComfortNet communicating system. This is our CTK04, or if we have an Amana SmartStat on a furnace, just a quick plug. Guys, remember your Amana SmartStat cannot be used on any air handler besides the AHVE, which is the S-Series air handler. Okay, so if you've got a customer that has a new air handler and they're trying to put an Amana SmartStat on it, it won't work. We still get, or I know I still get probably 2 calls a week. Hey, I don't know why this unit's not working. They give me the model number. It's a Comfort Bridge unit, but they're trying to use a ComfortNet thermostat on it. It won't work. It will work on our furnaces, but if you have an old CTK04 or something on an air handler, it cannot be replaced with a Amana Smart thermostat. In that scenario, though, this is the wiring diagram, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the communicating thermostat. And then you would break the R and C in between the equipment and the Dragonfly, and then 1 and 2 would tie in and go to your outdoor unit. Will there be retrofit kits? New equipment only. Okay, so no, there will not be. We cannot, if we have an air handler that was just sold and we have a coil go bad in it, then we can replace that coil, of course, with a 410 coil. But if they want to replace their outdoor unit, let's say that they have a condenser warranty, and they register the equipment and they have a unit replacement for 1 to 10 years. And we decide that the compressor has gone bad, the system needs to be replaced, they're going to have 2 options. They will get an R32 unit in replacement of that 410 unit, and they can use it as a selling perspective to sell a new indoor air handler, or they can replace the compressor outside with a 410 compressor. This is the same thing that happened when we switched from R22 to 410. Daikin's going to keep their promise as to you will get a condenser, but once all the 410 condensers are gone, it will be an R32. And there's not going to be a retrofit kit for a coil that you can slide into that 410 air handler to make it compatible with that R32 condenser outside. So that's what this is saying. All of our new units will have, all of our new air handlers already have the A2L mitigation system installed in them. And so everything being released moving forward as far as air handlers will have that equipment already installed. So the purpose of the mitigation system is to reduce the refrigerant concentration levels, LFL basically. So that's by running the blower motor. Maximum charge will be determined by the volume of the area being served by the equipment. So if all of the charge is lost into an area, so say we have a leak, it's in a closet, okay, and all of our charge is lost inside that air handler in the closet. The area, it must stay below a percentage of lower flammability limit. So on the side of your area air handler, you're going to see a tag, and it may be a 3-ton unit, but it's going to say minimum square footage 396 square foot. And we're going, hold on 1 second. I mean, all of our equipment is based off of 400 square foot per ton. So how is that possible for a 3-ton? All it's saying is if you have 3 tons of air available, then you have enough space to exhaust the amount of A2L refrigerant that is in a 3-ton piece of equipment. So in a 5-ton, you're looking at like 5.2 pounds of refrigerant total. A lot less refrigerant than what's been in our units previous to R32. So it may say that on the side of that 5-ton air handler that you need to have a minimum of 600 square foot. That's where the ducts are servicing, because what's going to happen, remember, if there's a detection of our A2L product, our blower motor is going to kick on and it's going to exhaust that refrigerant into the supply area space. Right. So if we have a full loss of equipment, it could exhaust 5 pounds of refrigerant into the home or into that service area to keep it from being 1, flammable, and then 2, it's not going to be hazardous to the customer or anything like that in that area as well. That's why that space needs to be big enough. What happens if we get below that space? So say I had a firefighter in one of my class and he had a question. What happens if there's a fire in the house and the fire basically makes its way into the attic and the system is caught on fire? Well, remember, if we have the largest system, a 5-ton system, and we've got in between 5 and 6 pounds of refrigerant, or maybe even 7 pounds, most of the time that's split 50-50, or pretty close in between the indoor and the outdoor, maybe even a little bit more outdoor. It's going to be less than what a can of hairspray would do. Okay. Or more importantly, if you have propane tanks around your house or you have natural gas or whatever, those are all way more dangerous than what we're dealing with in our refrigerant. So yes, do we need to pay attention to it? Of course, but the main purpose of LFL is to make sure that we're exhausting and adding enough CO2 space into where the refrigerant is being exhausted to. See a couple questions here. I will have to check on that. I'm not certain. I would probably say yes because it's just detecting. The question was, does anybody know if the SM380 from a few years ago will read 32 or 454? All it's doing is reading a refrigerant, and so I'm assuming that it's going to work, but we can verify that. Okay, so does the mitigation system apply to mini splits? Because a traditional mini split has a small amount of 32, they will not be required in most applications to have a mitigation system, right? Some of these systems only have 20 ounces in them, and that's not enough to have any type of worry about combustion or flammability. So no, they're not going to have mitigation systems in them. I was on a site visit the other day though, and the unit had 6.5 pounds in it. So I haven't received that information yet, but I would assume if we've got 5-ton units that have 5 pounds and they have to have it, that are larger, like 4MXS, not certain because it's, possibly 3 or 4 heads on that unit that are dispersing that refrigerant in different places of the home. I don't know if that makes a difference, but as far as our regular 1-to-1s or possibly even 1-to-2s, not going to have to worry about mitigation systems. All right, fact versus fiction. There's more than one good reason to choose R32. In fact, there's 32 of them. A lot of you have seen the R32 reasons to choose 32. So let's see how many questions you can get right. What I would like everybody to do is at the top of this page, you will see join at vvox.app. So if you'll just grab your phone or your computer, whatever's closest to you, and go to vvox.app. Once that opens, it's going to ask you for a session ID. That ID is listed at the top of this page as well. You'll enter that and hit join session, and then it'll bring this question up on your phone. I'm going to give everybody just a moment to get logged in. As you're logging in, you can go ahead and answer as well. The question is R32 going away in 2029? Yes, no, or it will be replaced by 8675309. About 20 more seconds here for people to register. I still see that there's some other people getting added in. All right, so the answer is no, it will not be replaced. Okay, so on your phone, you will see an explanation there. You can screenshot that and read all of that later if you would like, or on your computer. But R32 is within the 700 GWP limit set by the EPA in its final technology transition rule. So this is something that is commonly asked, and I could see why. We just went from R32 to 410, from SEER 1 to SEER 2, and then a new refrigerant all in the last few years. So there's been a lot of change in our industry, but this is our R32 answer. If R32 is better than 410A, why have we been using 410 for so long? 410 is a bigger number, so it's a better refrigerant. R32 was not allowed until recently, or R32 is a better blend than 410. All right, and so the answer is R32 was not allowed until recently. Once again, you can see the explanation on your device. Um, Surely somebody was just being funny by saying 410 is a bigger number, so it's a better refrigerant. And then R32 is a better blend than 410. R32 is not a blended refrigerant. It's a single component refrigerant. So a little bit of a trick question there. Next question, is there propane in R32? Yes, 63% propane, yes, 35% propane, or no, 0% propane. A few more seconds here. R32 has 0 propane in it. Another one that is highly misconcepted from the very beginning. So everybody thinks because it is a mildly flammable refrigerant that it has propane. There is 0% propane inside of R32. As a matter of fact, sending your child or going down and filling up your car with gas is way more problematic than what working with R32 refrigerant is, or going down and going to your local gas company and having your propane tank filled up is way more, um, uh, I guess, risky than what using R32 refrigerant would be. So big misconception there. 0% propane. What safeguards are added to R32 equipment? Um, Refrigerant charge quantity, internal extinguisher, and mitigation system. All right, so there was two answers here, refrigerant charge quantity and mitigation system. So the refrigerant charge quantity is what we were talking about as far as the minimum amount of square footage allowed for that equipment to be installed, and then your mitigation system, which is going to be something like your Dragonfly or your actual sniffing component inside of your equipment that's installed from the manufacturer. Okay, so why is R32 the right choice? Just bear with me, guys. We're getting close here. Everybody's kind of seen all of these reasons. I'm not going to go through all of these, but better than 410 for the planet, globally accepted. It's a pure, not blended, lower GWP, difficult to ignite, lower charge in our equipment, has a proven history or proven use, because we've been using it since around 2012. And in an odd scenario, if you had R32 trapped inside the refrigerant circle, first, we don't want to unbraze any of our components. We want to cut them loose. But if there is a scenario to where our torches have to touch the copper before we've been able to do an evacuation or something like that, and you feel like that there could be refrigerant trapped in that section of your copper, then we need to penetrate that copper and release that refrigerant from that area. When executing a repair indoors, make sure that you have some type of fan blowing in that area. You can even turn on the blower motor, depending on what you're repairing in that section. When executing a repair outdoors, as long as you're not in a confined space outdoor and walls on every side of you or something, then you should be okay. And then, of course, we need to purge with gas, nitrogen, properly evacuate, properly charge, make sure not to draw in outside air. Let's see here. So Shane said that there's an update on the field piece website for the SM380V. And then the recovery machines need to be brushless and DC for spark proof resistance. Good questions. All right. Also, just for our contractors, just chill out. If you are already following industry's best practices, flowing with nitrogen when you braze, triple evacuation, using modern tools, this is only going to be slightly different than what you're already accustomed to. All of your superheat and subcool charts are in the manuals, in the installation manuals. They have released the installation manuals for the 14 and 15 SEER A2L product. As soon as our higher SEER stuff is released, as it comes out, they will release those manuals with those superheat and subcooling values. I also have that chart saved, so if you need it, just email me, I'll send it to you. So if you have customers ask, I can get it to them pretty quick when they text or call. I know that Hunter and Clint have it as well, so no big deal there. And then, of course, all of my information, most of you guys already have this, but if you have any questions, if you want a copy of this, this is actually recorded today. I've had a lot of people ask if they could have a recorded version of this PowerPoint. So this was recorded today. What do we do for a customer that has a straight cool system with a damper setup? Okay, good question. I actually had this written down to go over. The zoning capabilities, there is a new addition to the Dragonfly for zone scenarios. I've had this come up in the last couple days. I have a part number here, guys, but I don't know. It's Goodman's part number. I'll be happy to share it. It's PCB CM 033135. Yes, feel free to send this presentation to your customers if you'd like. I don't care. And that is, I can send you a picture of it if you want. Just email me and I'll send it. But it's just basically going to have the accessory powers for all of your UV light and then also for all of your zones. So right now, if you have a zoned system and you have a Dragonfly that has to be installed for the mitigation system, this hasn't to my knowledge, we don't have this on our shelves yet. I don't even know if it's been released out into the field from Daikin yet. I'm hoping so because I'm starting to get this question quite a bit. But at this moment, you would have to manually open all of your dampers and run the system through the Dragonfly, and they would have no zone control. All right. I've had plenty ask, well, the system's going to operate whether the mitigation system's hooked up or not. Great. If you want to run the system like that, that's up to you. I'm not going to recommend it because if there's a catastrophe at that house and that system has a leak in it or something and it was not detected, that's going to fall back on the contractor. So our number one suggestion right now at this time is to open your zones and at least get the customer cooling until that part is released. It's just part of the transfer from A1 product to A2L product. It's just something that we have to do, but hopefully we'll have that PCB board in shortly and the schematics and logistics on how to get that thing set up too, because it's just got your zones, and so everything's going to go through there and then to your zone board and then to your equipment. So it's one more thing in place. But any other questions, or what other questions do we have at the moment? If Goodman Warranty approves OBSO for R32 replacement from 410, they will not honor the other components. If the outdoor is approved for the unit replacement through OBSO, indoor will have to be swapped to match the expense at the contractor. Same goes for mini splits. That is correct. Yeah, 100% correct on that. You can use it as a selling tactic to actually replace their indoor equipment, or the other option is for the next 10 years, they can replace that compressor with the 410. If they don't want to do that, then we'll have to just do the compressor replacement instead of condenser replacement. Same thing happened, like I said, with the transition from R30 or from R22 to 410A. If we tried to honor that, or if Daikin tried to, they would be making 410 product forever. So can't do that. And Carla, not sure. Yeah, not certain about that. Anything else I can help with? Hopefully you guys got some good use out of this today and found some worth in what we talked about. Like I said, if there's any other questions, feel free to shoot me a text at any time or give me a shout. Hopefully the questions were kind of cool too, to where you guys could be a little bit more interactive in what was going on. If y'all have any suggestions on what I could do better for your contractors, and I'll be happy to pass that along to the other regions as well. Thank y'all so much. If there's no other questions, that'll conclude our Zoom for A2L Educational Training. Have a good day.
Thanks, Curtis.
Thanks, Curtis.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Curtis.